save you from doing what I had to. I'm going into that forest with you.
Without order?
Jordana Scott directs and co-writes Forgive Us All, a 2025 zombie apocalypse movie filmed in New Zealand. So the story of this one focuses on a few individuals. We have a kind of zombie apocalypse world where there's some type of viral infection has infected most of humanity, turning them into 28-day style zombies. It's not actually clear if they're undead. It doesn't look like it. They appear to be more sort of infected, so to speak. And there seems to be this new government that has kind of sprung up that have made an antidote for it, but control it quite sort of tightly. And there seems to be limited resources. And a guy from the outside steals one of these kind of vials of the antidote to cure his son, and along the way back is wounded by these kind of government and is taken care of by this woman who has lost her own family to the kind of the zombie infection, along with her father-in-law. But the government agents want this kind of vial of antidote back. And there's also, of course, the ever threat of the zombies out there. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So if you are a fan of The Walking Dead, I would suggest this movie may well be a kind of a stopgap for that one, because it feels kind of like a Walking Dead style adventure. Humans against humans for the most part, with the zombies in the kind of the background. In this kind of post-apocalyptic world, you know, how humans have devolved into a more tribal and brutal kind of society with brutal justice and redemption, you know, held by a few. I will say the movie is wonderfully shot. You know, New Zealand now pretty famous for a good place to make movies, especially if you want these wide open vistas and kind of scenery shots, and this movie does not disappoint. The cinematography is on point, and you know it's very, very well filmed. It looks slick. I'm not quite sure of the budget of this one, but I do think that the movie has a decent feel of production. You know, this is a movie which has a lot of kind of sort of environmental shots and things like that, and open world, but we also get like shots on like farms and things like this, and this kind of little homestead type place. So it feels like there's a few different kind of locations on here. The actual infected zombies, if you want to call them that, they look pretty good and they're kind of quite interesting. They sort of move in a kind of an unnatural way, and they have kind of this clicking noise. How they kind of seem to be able to communicate with them. They're not necessarily mindless Romero style zombies. They do seem to have a like pack hunter mentality and things like that, so that kind of makes them feel kind of pretty dangerous, and they're not slow. They as I said, as they're more infected rather than undead, they've not like succumbed to rigor mortis and stuff, so they kind of still move around pretty nimbly and stuff, but just with that kind of terrible ferocity. And the makeup looks decent and kind of grotesque. And there's one scene, for example, where in the beginning of the movie where we see a young girl turn into a zombie, and the way it's done, I think, is actually pretty effective, and you know, quite even goes far to say it's a little bit disturbing, I have to say. I think the acting performances are all fine. Everyone here does a decent enough job. I mean, no one's required to do too much heavy lifting, to be quite honest with you. But you know, no one here is a clunker in regards to the acting either. What doesn't work, I mean, it is somewhat reminiscent of a Walking Dead style movie, and we've seen so many zombie movies at this point. You really do need to have a little bit of unique selling point, I think, to stand out, and this one doesn't. It is very much a somewhat sort of typical zombie movie. You know, with the zombies in the background, as I said. So, you know, it's how humanity has devolved is the kind of the main thing here. It doesn't really feel like unique in any kind of particular way, though, to be brutally honest. I think the movie's played with a few kind of like Hollywood decisions. I know this isn't a Hollywood movie before you say anything, but you know what I mean. Like silly kind of movie decisions. I'll give you a couple. So when this woman who is out kind of reminiscing about her daughter that has passed away, she comes across this guy that has been shot, and we learn later on that he's 6 foot because someone says it. So he's a fairly tall dude. And yet somehow she manages to pick. He's unconscious. She picks him up and puts some like lead over the back of a horse. Well, how did he get up there? You know, there's plenty of occasions where people seem to sacrifice their lives when they didn't really need to. You know, oh, well, I'll create a distraction. Well, you didn't really need to do that because I didn't really feel like you particularly distracted anyone for very long. Or why? Why didn't you actually just try and take these guys out? And there's also things like, oh, in the same scene, you know, this happens twice in the movie. You know, we have these kind of government agents coming to attack, and there's not many of them, there's like 3. So our protagonist, instead of shooting the government agents, decides to shoot in the air to get their attention. Why not just shoot these people? I mean, why shoot in the air to get them to follow you, to then only try and shoot them again later on? Why not, while you have the element of surprise and they don't know where you are, take the shot? Again, it's just like these kind of like these little decisions that are in this movie that detracts from the kind of like the what could have been a sort of realistic movie about the a kind of post-apocalyptic world where there is this kind of infectious disease out there, because it just feels like these decisions here just seem to be like, you know, movie decisions, should we call it, rather than Hollywood decisions. They just don't make sense in a logical way, but they make sense in a kind of like, we need this for the narrative to go in a certain direction. So the movie, I felt, it looks like it had 3 credited writers, but I will say I think the writing here is weaker, I will say. I feel we get very little information about our male protagonist. He's this guy who's you know, got this kind of veil, this injection for this antidote. How did he get it? It doesn't, you know, how did he infiltrate? It's never discussed. I mean, I guess they just didn't have the budget for it. You know, he's just got it. He's just running away at this point. But again, things aren't fleshed out. This cure, how much of it is available? Why isn't it being kind of distributed? Why are these governments are after one singular vial of it? I mean, it doesn't seem. Are we guessing that it's like 1 vial per person? Is it going to make that much difference? Is it the only vial? Is it like a prototype? It just doesn't. It doesn't give us any information about it. You know, it's just a MacGuffin to get person from point A to point B as a kind of motivation. It doesn't give us any kind of like fleshed out kind of like details about it, nor does it really give you any information about this kind of government. And we're told that they've kept survivors in camps. Are we guessing that they're kind of slave labour camps and stuff? But they kind of say that, oh, you know, it's keeping people safe. But again, it's just nothing is kind of ever shown about it. It is lots of telling, not showing. Let's talk about the zombies. If you're wanting a full-on zombie movie, you will be disappointed. The zombies do not show up until right at the end. We get a couple of flashbacks where you will briefly see a zombie being kind of going from human to zombie, but the zombies proper do not show up until right at the end of the movie for the climax. So if you're wanting to watch this zombie movie as a zombie movie, I feel you will be disappointed. It is mostly more concerned with a look at people after an apocalypse and how they have devolved. And that's basically what the movie is about. So, because of that, the movie has a somewhat of a slow pace. You know, it's well acted and well shot, for sure. I think there's some story issues, but the pacing is maybe slower than some would like. And again, you factor in some kind of like Wall-E decisions here, and, you know, credibility and grittiness sort of tends to go out the window. Overall, it's not a bad film. It's watchable if you want a more of the same zombie movie. It is nothing special. It doesn't stand out in any way, but it isn't a bad film. It's just more of the same, and you probably guess I'm going to go with a 5 out of 10 for this movie. What were your thoughts if you've seen it? Please do let me know, and I look forward to seeing you next time.